The idea of ego is nothing new in our society. We've seen ego drive company founders into the ground and our favorite athletes crumbling. It's a story that is told countless amount of times, and every time we see ego win, we see the downfall of a team, company, or person. So if we see all the downfalls of ego, why do we continue to let it affect us in our everyday life? It's because ego is a hard thing to keep in check. Whether we like it or not, it creeps up on all of us all the time. It's up to us to decide how we react to it. In my personal life, I've let ego affect any quote-unquote success I may have achieved. My ego stopped me from making more strides in the workplace because it wanted to shield me away from criticism, and it didn't want me to face the reality that I just wasn't as good as I hyped myself up to be. It wasn't until I read Ryan Holiday's book, Ego is the Enemy, that I started to understand all the ways ego can affect us in our daily life. I'll be sharing with you my main takeaways from the book in the hopes that you can combat your own ego. Aspire. During this stage, it's hard to imagine how ego can actually affect you, because when I was thinking about ego in the past, I always thought that ego only came when you reach success or when you reach a certain mountaintop. Take, for example, this YouTube channel. For me, this YouTube channel has been a goal and dream and journey that I've been working on since 2021, and I would constantly talk to my friends and family about growing this channel to something big, but the problem was that I was just living in my head. I would constantly just envision this dream, but I wouldn't put any of the work to actually make it come true. There's this quote from Uncharted 3 that I think about a lot. All men dream, but not equally. Those who dream by night in the dusty recesses of their minds wake in the day to find that it was vanity. But the dreamers of the day are dangerous men, for they may act their dream with open eyes to make it possible. This I did. See, when we stay in our own head and just imagine the success that we have, it's really just ego talking. Ego wants you to believe that success is just right around the corner, and it doesn't want you to put in the daily work to make it happen. Ego is this mini dopamine hit that you can rely on when the going gets tough. And going back to my YouTube example, I would do this all the time when it came to creating content. I would imagine the success and it would fuel my passion for wanting to do content creation. But like any passion, it quickly fizzled out once I realized the amount of work I had to do in order for this dream to become a reality. Another way to look at this is to actually think back to your own life. How many times have we had goals where we tell our friends and family immediately about the things we want to achieve in a year? What usually happens when you say these goals to them? You usually end up getting a false sense of praise for doing little to no work on that goal. And the crazy thing is that the more this happens, the less likely you are to actually jump and take action on that goal. So now that we've identified the problem that comes with ego during this stage, the one way you can combat this is by doing the daily work. And I've adopted this daily work practice when it comes to YouTube by focusing on my script writing, focusing on making videos, and planning content weeks ahead of time. So now all of a sudden, instead of imagining the success in my head, I've now implemented the daily work where I spend more of my time actually doing the work rather than thinking about the success in my head. Success. Now, anytime in my life, whenever I've achieved any form of success, I found myself to be in a state of relaxation. But you have to remember during this time that when you are relaxing, that you don't allow your ego to think that you are all of a sudden a master in your craft. Sports is the best example of ego getting in the way of success. How many times have we seen our favorite sports team pull off a big win against a great team only to lose to a lesser team the following week? That's ego and complacency kicking in. Or how many times have we seen one of our favorite athletes have a great season only to follow it up with a terrible season the following year? That again is ego and complacency kicking in. Now those are the ways of ego getting in the way of success in sports, but how many times have we seen great coaches and great players continue to rise to the challenge each and every year? This is partially what made Nick Saban such a legendary coach in the game of football. No matter how many national championships he won, he was constantly looking for ways to improve his team and improve his craft. Now knowing those two examples is actually really funny, because looking back at my own life, I've let ego get in the way of my own success. I thought for me, whenever I reached a new position or reached a company with a prestigious job title, I thought that I had made it. And because I thought I made it, I let my ego get in the way of any criticism or any feedback I needed to hear in order to improve my craft. Now going back to my sport examples, one of the reasons Nick Saban became such a legend in the sport was this idea that he always remained a student. He was always looking for ways to learn and always looking for ways to improve his craft. Now this is something I should have done in my professional life, but I didn't. I maintained this idea that I was all of a sudden a master and I didn't need to learn anything new. And the moment you start to think that is the moment you start to die. You must continue to challenge yourself and drop your ego and accept that being a student means that you're probably going to look dumb, you're going to make mistakes, but this is all part of the learning process in terms of becoming the best version of yourself. During this time of success, it's also important to define what success means to you. Now, going back to the example of Nick Saban, what made his team so special is that he would set a standard for how his teams would play no matter the score on the scoreboard. So how do you actually implement a standard into your own life is that you have to ask yourself, how do you approach each day, or how do you approach the work that you're about to do? And you must live up to that standard each and every day, because that is what's going to keep you on the path to success and staying on that path. Failure. There is no way to avoid failure in life because we are all going to fail at one point or another. But it's important when failure does come that it doesn't define you. Now, when I was unemployed for pretty much all of 2023, I can't tell you how disheartening the whole process was, because I was putting out countless amount of job applications to the world, and I was getting to the final rounds to these interviews, and I was constantly getting rejected. Now, during this moment in time, it's very easy for your ego to take advantage of you and make you feel sorry for yourself anytime you face failure. It wants to tell you a story about how you're the center of the universe, but you can't let your ego get in the way during this stage. You have to fight against it, and you have to tell yourself what are ways that you can improve from this situation and what are the lessons that you can learn from the failure. I started to ask myself, what are ways that I can improve my interviewing skills? What are ways that I can improve my resume? All of a sudden, when I started to ask those questions to myself, I moved the ego out of the way and I put myself out of the victim mindset and started taking control in my life again. And doing this allowed me to eventually get a job offer towards the end of 2023 going into 2024. Now, I genuinely think that a lot of people can get value out of reading Ego is the Enemy. I personally love the framework of always remaining a student and setting a standard in your life. And it's really important to manage your ego, because whether we like it or not, ego is never going away. So we must find ways to prevent ourselves from becoming an egomaniac and ruining our lives. Thanks for watching. With love and respect, Yash.